Hey everyone, Brad Thorpe from Isophit. Welcome to another edition of Isophit Q&A. So today, our question is, can Isophit help reduce my scoliosis? Now, you can kind of see from the skeleton here, well, it doesn't really have scoliosis at all, right? So what is scoliosis? Well, that's where you get a curvature of your spine structure. So if I look at up here, so I'm going to have to stand up just a little bit. So if you start getting curvature in your spine structure, so let's call it that. That's probably not going to be a good thing for a lot of motion and stuff. You can sort of see how you're going to sort of get compression on the facet joint on one side, a gapping on the other. Now, I can't even create some of the extremes that I see with scoliosis. I've seen everything from, just shy of 80 degrees of rotation through sort of the lumbar and thoracic region to the point where it's almost like they're almost side bent and it's kind of really contorted. But one thing that I'm going to sort of look at is when discussing scoliosis, there was a very interesting position paper that was put out in 2013, and it was by the International Chiropractic Scoliosis Board. And I'm going to look at them as some of probably the world's leading experts on scoliosis. Why? Because they're an internationally recognized board. Chiropractors traditionally are the world's leading experts in spine health. So why not listen to them? Now, one of the interesting things is, and I'm just going to go put this guy down over here in the corner. So one of the things that you got to think about when looking at spine health is, what are the experts saying? Want to know what they said? They said if you have scoliosis, you probably should just not do dynamic exercise anymore. They recommended only doing isometric exercise. There's several reasons, so I implore you to go read the position paper. Now, one of the things that they sort of talked about, though, was how one side gets shorter and then the other side gets longer. So when we're doing bilateral movements, what we end up doing is reinforcing the dysfunction of the short side. So in essence, making it stronger and then helping destabilize or reduce the strength capabilities of the long side. So a double-edged sword. So you're making one side stronger, you're making the other side weaker. And one thing that I found of extreme interest in this paper, they talked about when you start to lose that structural capability of one side of that muscle tissue, how that can start to lead to early brain degeneration. So it's pretty crazy when you start to think that muscles and function of sort of, they use the word white tissue, right? And what they're looking at is like the ligamentous structure in between the vertebral bodies, the tendon structures, and all this really cool stuff. So what they sort of noticed and what they sort of stated was, let's only do isometrics. So if we're looking at that, and then we're looking at the Isophit MSK, which is arguably one of the best isometric exercise products on the planet, because want to know something? We can do segmental spinal exercises on the MSK. Now when you get into the Isophit Strength Trainer, which is our beast of a machine, it is the best exercise product on the planet, hands down. Don't care what segment you're talking about, because it can do so many different things. But one of the interesting things, if we're looking at spinal positioning stuff, well, we have to look at around the longitudinal axis of the spine. So we have all these different plays around our vertebral bodies. So if let's say we wanted to start training stuff within the thoracic region, we can sort of sit up here and work on spinal extension. But if you have a scoliosis, you may want to skew that a little bit by just changing the orientation of your spine, right? You guys can kind of see and get an idea that that's around my sort of mid-thorax, right? My shoulder blades. Well, I can bring that way up here, right? So I can start doing some higher up levels. So I can start at, say, let's say C7, bring it down. I could be in and around T2, T3, sort of getting into T5, 6, right? So you guys can see how we can start targeting stuff. And then I can start to say, well, I want to change the orientation. I may not want to necessarily be in that sagittal plane. Well, I could be here And this is where the strength trainer comes in really awesome, because here we got 15 degrees, on the strength trainer we got 10 degrees adjustments. But we also have 4 or 5 other places we can apply force and resistance to magnify the benefit of this exercise, to help with your individualized exercise protocol for your client. Because I don't know who your patient is. So to sit there and say, well, that's going to be the perfect machine for somebody that I don't know, well, I can tell you this, it's going to be damn good. Now, the strength trainer, though, it does adapt to everyone. And we have high success rates with improving the pain of our scoliosis patients, as well as a little bit of improvement, depending on when they come to you, from a realignment perspective. If you're more seniored, well, it's more about pain modulation. If you're a youth, well, we can have some pretty significant impact with the realignment of your spinal structures and enhancing of the muscle contractility of all the muscles that may support each and every single spinal segment. That's the level of detail we can get to with Isophit. It's spinal control at this like unbelievably blown up level, where it's like, I want to work on everything from your suboccipital muscles all the way down to the muscles that sort of come in on the underside of your sacrum and your coccyx and everything in between. But we have that capability. You just got to know the names of muscles. You got to understand how you look at building blocks, really, and how you apply force to those building blocks, otherwise known as your vertebral bodies. We'll see you on Monday for the next episode of Isophit Q&A.